It's wild how fast 17 years can disintegrate. One second you're stepping through the front door of your own home, the place you painted together, where every squeaky stairboard tells a story, and the next, you're just a shadow at the threshold. That's where I stood, stunned, staring at my wife, no, ex-wife now, I guess, Isla. She looked right through me, laughing like I'd walked in on a sitcom instead of our shared life unraveling. No drawn-out conversation. No tears. Just her words, dry and sharp, "You should go, Eli. We're done." And beside her, lounging on the couch I'd spent a weekend refinishing, was Grant, the guy she'd replaced me with. His boots, still crusted with beach mud, rested on the coffee table I built the summer we lost our first dog. The gouges in the wood seemed deeper now. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I turned on my heel and climbed the stairs slowly, like the weight of 17 years had suddenly settled into my bones. The bedroom still smelled like her, vanilla and sea air. I grabbed my old army duffel from the closet, the one with the busted zipper I always said I'd fix. I packed slowly, shirts, jeans, socks, a sweater she'd given me our 5th Christmas. It wasn't about stalling. It was about staying calm enough to keep my hands from trembling. Downstairs, I heard their voices, her laugh now softer, his deeper. They were joking about the house. Grant said something about opening up the space, as if this place needed a redesign instead of a soul. I zipped the bag, took one long look around the room, and headed down. Isla was pouring a glass of the Pinot I bought for our anniversary last month. She didn't even flinch when I passed her. Grant barely acknowledged me, flipping through channels like he owned the place. At the door, I paused. The photos on the wall stared back, us hiking the gorge, Isla at the farmer's market in spring, that trip to Moab. I'd been part of her whole damn life, and she tossed it like yard clippings. I could have shouted. Demanded answers. But what was the point? So I stepped outside. The Oregon dusk had rolled in, misty, damp, quiet except for the waves in the distance. I tossed my duffel into the back of the Tacoma I'd kept alive since college and fired it up. My hands were tight on the wheel as I backed out, my eyes dry, my chest burning. Isla thought she'd broken me. Thought she'd won. But she didn't know the part of me that doesn't beg. That remembers everything. That waits. She didn't know what was coming next. I drove down Harbor Drive, the house growing smaller in the rearview mirror until it was nothing more than a glow in the fog. The air felt heavier out here, salter too, like the ocean was pulling every emotion out of me. But I didn't feel angry anymore. Not exactly. What I felt was colder, cleaner. She wanted me gone? Fine. She could have her picture-perfect life with Grant and his designer boots. But this chapter wasn't over, not even close. A few miles out, I pulled into an old gas station near the cliffs. The neon sign buzzed and sputtered overhead as I killed the engine and let the silence settle around me. My phone was burning a hole in my pocket. I pulled it out, scrolled through my contacts, and stopped at a number saved under Red Lantern. I hesitated for just a second, then typed. Initiate. Subject confirmed. Proceeding as planned. The reply came almost instantly. All teams green. Phase 1 begins at 0900. I stared at the screen, the blue glow lighting up the cab like a low flame. 17 years of playing house. 17 years of biting my tongue and keeping secrets. Isla thought she'd seen all of me, thought I was just Eli, the handyman, the beach town nobody. She never knew what I did before the quiet life. She never asked. And I never offered. She didn't care about the late nights, the encrypted drives, the locked black case under the floorboards of my workshop. She just liked that I made things easy. She liked the version of me that stayed small. But that version of me didn't exist anymore. I turned the ignition again, the engine humming to life like it had been waiting too. I merged onto the highway, heading south, past the sleeping fishing villages and boarded-up surf shacks. The road ahead was dark, but my mind was clear. No more pretending. Isla's last words echoed in my head, just leave. The way she smirked, like she'd won something. As if Grant had replaced me with the ease of swapping out a light bulb. He could have the house, the table, the wine. But he didn't know who he was playing with. She didn't either. The glow from my phone caught my eye, still lit with that single word, initiate. A message that marked the end of my silence. Tomorrow, Isla would wake up thinking she'd cleaned house. But she was wrong. She hadn't removed me. She'd set me free. And the reckoning? It was already in motion. I drove on into the night, the coast fading into mist behind me, my past finally unraveling. 1 mile at a time. Proceeding as planned. The reply from Red Lantern glowed across my screen. All teams green. Phase 1 begins 0900. It was happening. For real. No more hypotheticals. I stared at the message like it might burn a hole through my phone. I'd trained for this. Hoped it would never come to this. But it had, and Isla had handed me the perfect excuse to vanish. She thought I was just a quiet carpenter with a knack for restoring antique boats and fixing things that didn't talk back. She didn't know about the bruised ribs I once passed off as a fall from scaffolding, or the nights I'd disappeared on a job, when in reality I was halfway across the state in surveillance vans or debriefing at classified drop sites. She never asked. And I never told. That was safer. Cleaner. I turned off Highway 101 after another 30 minutes and took a winding forest road up through the pines. A few deer darted across the gravel in my headlights. The road ended at a gate that blended into the woods. I keyed in the code from memory, the pad chirped, and the metal arm swung open. The cabin looked like a forgotten ranger post, wooden slats worn to gray, porch sagging like it hadn't held weight in years. But the silence around it? That was designed. Inside, it was just how I remembered. Spartan. A cot. A table. A locked steel case under the floorboards. A faint hum buzzed from the backup battery systems that powered the comms. I set my bag down by the wall and stood for a moment, listening to the crickets outside. The air smelled like cedar and moss, and for the first time in hours, I let myself exhale. I checked the encrypted line. Still online. No interruptions. No glitches. We were live. I poured myself some stale coffee from the emergency tin and sat on the edge of the cot, staring at the pine ceiling above me. I never thought 44 would find me here, hiding out in a federal ghost zone while my wife drank Chardonnay with a guy who looked like he fell out of a luxury car commercial. Isla never asked about my work. Said it bored her. Said she liked real men, guys who didn't come home smelling like sawdust and silence. Funny thing is, Grant, her new favorite wine buddy? He's been in my files for almost a year. Offshore transfers. Crypto laundering through a shell company in Vancouver. Some vague shell contracts tied to a property management group that fronts for a much nastier outfit in the Balkans. Grant wasn't just some homewrecker with perfect teeth. He was my case. And Isla, well, she just put herself in the middle of it. Whether she knew it or not, the woman who tossed me out of her life had just turned it into a federal crime scene. Phase 1 was hours away. And this time, I wasn't just watching. I stood and began pacing the length of the cabin, each step thudding softly on the warped floorboards. The place was quiet, except for the buzz of that old fridge in the corner and the occasional creak of the wind pushing against the siding. I wandered into the kitchenette, a sink, a tiny stove, a fridge humming louder than it had any right to. Inside, I found a can of root beer. Expired, probably, but cold enough. I cracked it open and took a long sip. The sweetness and carbonation cut through the fog in my head, grounding me. I thought about what was coming. 9 a.m. sharp. The teams would descend, 3 black SUVs, windows tinted, agents in windbreakers and boots. They'd knock once. Isla would open the door half asleep in her robe, maybe sipping her morning coffee, and then she'd freeze when she saw the badges. Grant, of course, would try to play it cool. But guys like him always do, until they realize the feds aren't bluffing. I almost smiled. Almost. Back on the couch, I grabbed the small leather notebook from my bag. The edges were worn smooth, and the spine barely held together anymore. Inside were years of breadcrumbs, names, dates, places. Just enough to trigger what I'd stored upstairs. I flipped toward the back and landed on a page with a single note scrawled months ago, G.L. Grant Lorman. I'd tagged him long before Isla decided he was her midlife epiphany. He popped up in a case file under a false LLC, moving crypto through land deals that never broke ground. I'd marked him and then waited until he showed up in my own living room. I tapped the page lightly, staring at those initials. Isla thought she'd thrown me out of my life like trash. She thought she was starting over. What she didn't know was the game had already begun, and I wasn't the one being played. I set the notebook down and checked my phone. No new alerts. Good. That meant everyone was in position. No screw-ups. No surprises. I leaned back, letting the safe house hold me in its cold silence. The fridge still hummed. The wind rustled the trees outside. My eyes closed for a second, not from exhaustion, but from clarity. She never knew who I was. Not really. And now, she'd learn. I crushed the empty can in my hand and tossed it in the trash. Then I stretched out on the couch, one arm tucked under my head. Sleep wouldn't come easy. But I didn't need it. I'd waited long enough. When I woke, the cabin was freezing. The kind of cold that seeps past the skin and coils around your bones. I sat up slowly, blinking at the faint gray dawn leaking through the blinds. 6:47 a.m. Just over 2 hours until Phase 1. It was almost time. GL. Today was the day Grant Lorman would finally go down, and Isla with him, whether she realized it or not. I stood and stretched, my spine cracking like dry timber beneath a boot. The cabin smelled like damp cedar and stale air, but it had done its job. I moved into the kitchenette, filled a chipped mug with cold water, and downed it in a few gulps. No coffee in the safe house, not the kind of place you stocked with comforts. Didn't need it anyway. The adrenaline had already kicked in, clear and sharp like mountain wind. I checked my phone. 7:12, red lantern, team in position. Rendezvous 0800. Black safe confirmed. Perfect. Everything was running smooth. I tapped out a quick reply. En route. Boots laced, jacket zipped, I grabbed my keys from the hook and stepped outside. The cold punched me in the chest, Oregon spring still clinging to its winter breath. Birdsong drifted through the trees, distant but steady. The truck sat in the gravel drive, dew frosting the windshield. I fired up the engine and let it idle, wiping the glass clean with the sleeve of my flannel. It was a short drive to the rendezvous, 20 minutes to a decommissioned warehouse at the edge of Coos Bay. No signage. No cameras. Just another shadow in the Bureau's playbook. As I turned onto the dirt road, tires crunching over gravel, my mind pulled me back. Last night, Isla's laugh floating through the window, Grant's smug silhouette slouched on my porch. 17 years I gave that woman. Built her a home with my hands, with real wood and good intentions. And she threw it all away for a smile and a sports car. But that wasn't the part that stung. Not really. It was the twist of fate. Because her new soulmate? He wasn't just some guy from her yoga class. He was my case. I'd spent the past 3 years chasing Grant Lorman through a financial labyrinth so deep you'd need sonar to reach the bottom. A hedge fund puppet on the surface, slick hair, custom suits, yacht club laugh. But underneath? He was moving millions for international syndicates. Dirty crypto. Forged art. Real estate fronts in Montenegro. A glorified mule dressed like GQ. We'd been close before. Real close. Then 6 months ago, Isla walked in with him on her arm. "This is Grant," she beamed. "My soulmate." I nearly choked on my beer. But I said nothing. Couldn't. Wouldn't. She thought I was a quiet fixer. An overpaid government analyst with bad coffee and a boring commute. And I let her think that. Because the truth? The less she knew, the better. For both of us. But I never thought Isla would get tangled up in it like this. I rolled into the warehouse lot at exactly 7:58 a.m., gravel crunching beneath my tires. A neat line of black SUVs was already parked along the fence line, the early sun glinting off their hoods. Rowan was leaning against one, cigarette dangling from the corner of his mouth, looking like he hadn't slept since Tuesday. "Morning, sunshine," he muttered, flicking ash without looking up. "You look like hell." I shrugged. "Didn't get much sleep." "Didn't think you would." Inside, Director Keller stood at a folding table surrounded by screens, topographical maps, and a thick file stack labeled G. Lorman, active. He was in his 60s, silver hair cropped tight, the kind of guy who could freeze a room with one glance. No wasted words. He looked up over his glasses. "You sure about this?" he asked. "She's your wife." "Was," I said, voice flat. "She made her choice." He gave a simple nod. Not sympathy. Just confirmation. Rowan clapped a hand on my shoulder. "Let's bury this bastard," he grinned. I didn't smile, but something inside me stirred, steady and cold. This was more than a takedown now. This was closure. We went over the final sweep. Surveillance had Isla's house covered, front, back, alley. Agents were staged 2 blocks out, ready to move at 0900 sharp. Another team would raid Lorman's fake investment firm downtown. We had full access to his accounts, shell company ties, audio of him boasting about laundering money through offshore art brokers in Croatia. I built this case from the ground up. 3 years of patience, long nights, silent tracking. Every piece was about to fall. Keller handed me a headset. "You're on feed control. If it gets messy, call the play." I slid it on, feeling that old rhythm return, calm, crisp, surgical. This was where I thrived. I thought about Isla as we loaded into the van. She'd never seen this part of me, the man who dismantled cartels and outplayed billionaires laundering blood money. To her, I was just Eli, who forgot trash day, who came home quiet. She never asked about the burner phones. Or the nights I came home shaking from something I couldn't explain. And now? Her perfect man, her Grant, was dragging her headfirst into a federal storm. She couldn't talk her way out of this. The van door slammed shut behind us. Screens flickered on. The live feed showed Isla's house, familiar, still, quiet. Her car. His car. Both in the drive. They had no idea. 8:45 a.m. 15 minutes to go. I leaned back, headset buzzing in my ear, my eyes locked on the screen. This was my world, hidden, sharp, and unforgiving. Isla thought she'd embarrassed me last night. But she never knew the life I was hiding. And she was about to find out. She didn't know I'd been waiting for this. That the day Grant Lorman stepped into my house wasn't a betrayal, it was the final piece I needed. The van rumbled onto the suburban street, tires humming over asphalt. Phase 1 was live. I was strapped in, headset snug against my ear, breath slow, steady. The scent of stale coffee and cold steel filled the vehicle. My eyes didn't leave the screens in front of me. 8:55 a.m. 5 minutes until 0 hour. On the monitors, 2 camera angles tracked the house. The porch was still. Curtains drawn. The same porch I'd sanded and painted 6 years ago. The driveway hadn't changed, except now, her Subaru was parked beside his sleek black BMW. I could practically hear Grant bragging about the horsepower in his sleep. They were probably still in bed. Wrapped in sheets I bought. Sleeping in the home I built. But this wasn't about heartbreak. Not anymore. This was business. Static buzzed in my headset. Rowan muttered about local traffic. Then a voice cut in, crisp and controlled. Team Alpha in position. Team Beta, downtown office secure. Awaiting go. I took a deep breath, my voice calm. Execute. The screens shifted instantly. 3 black SUVs roared into view, tires biting into pavement. Doors flew open and agents emerged, moving with precision. 2 swept toward the front door, 2 curved around back, 1 perched at the corner for visual lock. Agent Torres, tough, methodical, pounded the door. FBI. Search warrant. Open up. Nothing. Then a flicker, curtains shifted. Isla's face, wide-eyed, half asleep, peered through the slit. She cracked the door open, still in her robe, hair tangled from sleep. What's happening? She asked, voice trembling. Torres didn't flinch. FBI. Warrant. Step aside. He moved in. She stumbled back, clutching the robe tight to her chest. Seconds later, Grant appeared at the top of the stairs, shirtless, bleary. What the hell? Then he saw the vests. The badges. The weapons. And the blood drained from his face. He turned. Bolted. Rookie mistake. Agents were already stationed at the back. He didn't get 5 steps before they took him down. Grant Lorman, you're under arrest. Cuffs clicked. Charges rolled off in a list. Racketeering. Fraud. International laundering. His mouth opened, slack. No protest. Just defeat. Isla's voice broke through the audio, rising sharp and shrill. What the hell is going on? Somebody tell me, Eli. She was looking around, panic in her voice. But I didn't answer. Not yet. She was finally seeing the world I'd kept from her. The one she thought she was too good for. And now? She was part of it. She spun in place, barefoot on the hardwood, watching as agents swarmed through the house, her house, tearing through drawers, flipping cushions, unzipping bags, tagging evidence. Nobody answered her questions. They didn't have to. On the screen in front of me, I watched her crumble. Isla sank onto the couch, her robe clutched tight, her hands trembling in her lap. Her eyes darted from agent to agent, searching for something familiar, something that would make sense of what she was seeing. But it wasn't sinking in yet. Not fully. It would. On the second feed, the downtown raid was peaking. Grant's office, steel, glass, and arrogance, was crawling with agents. Desks were being emptied, servers boxed up, flash drives tagged and zipped into evidence bags. His staff stood stunned, silent, while agents swept through the minimalist chaos. Office secure, came the beta team lead over comms. All assets seized. Moving to transport. I gave a small nod, even though they couldn't see me. Copy. Alpha team, status? House secure, Torres replied. Primary in custody. Secondary occupant detained for questioning. Secondary occupant. That was Isla. The camera showed her now, sitting rigid, an agent calmly questioning her. She blinked through tears, voice cracking. I don't know anything, she kept saying. This is my house. You can't do this. But they could. We could. We had the warrants, the intel, and 3 years of groundwork that led to this exact morning. She still didn't know I was behind it. Rowan nudged me, pointing at her on the screen. She's coming apart, he muttered, half smirking. I didn't return it. Watching her unravel wasn't satisfying. It was just inevitable. On the feed, agents rolled back a painting in the master bedroom. One I hung myself, years ago. Behind it, a safe, Grant's stash. They pried it open with practiced ease and pulled out bricks of cash, a burner phone, and a folder of paperwork I didn't need to see to understand. Isla's face drained the moment she saw it. That's not mine, she cried. I didn't know it was there. Maybe she didn't. Maybe she did. Either way, she'd let him into her life. She'd smiled through the dinners, accepted the gifts, ignored the signs. That made her part of it, knowingly or not. On screen, Grant was shoved into the back of an SUV, sweat soaking through his collar. The smugness was gone. I want my lawyer, he barked. Fine. Let him talk. I leaned back in my seat, headset snug, eyes on Isla. She sat frozen in the ruins of what used to be our home, whispering. This can't be happening. I thought about last night, her laugh, the way she stood in the doorway and told me to leave like it was nothing. Like I didn't matter. She thought she was in control. That she'd humiliated me. Now look at her. The radio crackled. Alpha team, evidence secured. Transport en route. I looked over at Rowan. Office hall? I asked. He gave a crooked grin. Enough to bury him for 20 years. Maybe more. I gave a slow nod. Good. On the screen, agents moved in a clean rhythm, sealing evidence crates, sliding into the SUVs like pieces locking into place. Isla was being walked toward a vehicle, no cuffs, but she wasn't free. She wasn't walking away from this untouched. Where are you taking me? She asked, her voice softer now. Small station, the agent said. We've got questions. The feed went dark as the ops wrapped clean. No loose ends. No heat. The van was still as the silence settled in. Rowan popped a pack of gum, handed me a piece. I took it, let the mint bite through the fog in my head. You good? He asked, watching me sideways. Yeah. And I was. This wasn't about payback. Not anymore. It was about justice. About bringing it all full circle. She never knew who I really was, not after 17 years. But she'd learn. The van rolled back toward the warehouse. The sun had fully broken now, casting golden streaks across the waking city. The skyline blurred past the windows, strip malls, traffic lights, sleepy dog walkers with steaming cups of coffee. Phase 1 was complete. The dominoes were falling. And I was the one who tipped them. Rowan hummed to himself, drumming the wheel as the van rumbled over cracked pavement. I sat quiet, headset now resting in my lap, screens dimmed, the operation behind us. Grant was in cuffs. The house, gutted. Isla, on her way in for questioning. My chest ached, but it wasn't nerves. It was weight. Memory. Finality. Then my phone buzzed. Isla. Missed call. Then another. Then a text. What did you do? All caps. No punctuation. Like she was screaming into the silence. I stared at the screen, thumb resting just above reply. Rowan glanced over, smirking. She's freaking out, huh? I didn't answer. Because she had no idea. Not yet. Let her sweat, I muttered, shoving the phone back into my jacket pocket. It buzzed again, another call. I let it ring out, watching the warehouse come into view as we pulled into the gravel lot. The sky was fully awake now, but my pulse stayed slow. Inside, the squad was already in motion, unpacking boxes marked with evidence tags. Laptops, hard drives, bundles of paper pulled from desk drawers and safes. The air smelled like dust and burnt coffee. Director Keller waved me over. Clean execution, he said gruffly, nodding toward the growing stacks. Lorman's finished. We've got enough to bury him deep. I gave a short nod, eyes scanning the table. There was the burner phone from the bedroom safe. The encrypted flash drives. His consulting invoices, each one a breadcrumb in a paper trail I'd traced for years. I swallowed the edge in my voice. What about her? Keller shrugged. She's in holding. Says she didn't know anything. He raised an eyebrow. We'll see. My phone buzzed again. Another message. Answer me. This time, I looked. Her tone had shifted, from rage to panic. She was probably sitting in an interrogation room wrapped in that same robe, trying to figure out how her fantasy imploded overnight. I didn't reply. I opened my camera roll instead, flipping to a photo from months back. Training drill. Me in full gear, side by side with Rowan. Behind us on the monitor, a blurry still from one of Grant's tapped calls, Isla's face frozen mid-laugh on the feed. I hadn't planned to use it like this. But now? It was perfect. I sent it, no caption. The phone rang within seconds. Isla flashed on the screen. I let it ring twice, then answered. Yeah. Her voice was jagged, breath hitching. What the hell is that picture? Eli, what did you do? I leaned against the metal table, watching an agent seal a file folder with evidence tape. You said no papers were needed, I said evenly. You were right. She started to speak, voice rising, but I ended the call before she could twist it into something else. Silence. For the first time in years, it felt like mine. Rowan wandered over, still chewing gum. She get the message? He asked, grinning. She's getting there, I replied, sliding the phone into my pocket. He chuckled. Man. You're cold. I didn't answer. Cold wasn't the word. I wasn't trying to break her. Not really. But after 17 years of invisibility? I wasn't explaining myself now. She'd see everything. On record. Under oath. And for once, she'd finally understand. Keller called us into the briefing room, a tight space with a scuffed whiteboard, metal chairs, and the faint smell of stale coffee. The monitors were already playing muted footage from the raid on Isla's house, looping through entry and seizure angles. Lohrmann's in processing, Keller said, tapping the top of a file folder. Already talking. Trying to cut a deal. I didn't even blink. Guys like Grant always folded once the cuffs were on and the suits stopped playing nice. What's he saying? I asked. Keller flipped the folder open. Claims your wife knew. Says she was in on the accounts. The gifts. Trying to shift heat onto her. My jaw tensed. She didn't, I said flatly. She's naive, not dirty. Keller arched a brow but didn't push it. We'll dig. Let the trail talk. I thought about it. About Isla and all the things she never saw, never questioned. The gold bracelet. The imported SUV. That villa in Mykonos she flaunted on Instagram. I'd seen the receipts. I knew how deep the money ran. She didn't know what she was part of, but she was part of it, all the same. The numbers didn't lie. $140,000 in gifts tied directly to Lohrmann's shell companies. The vacation property was a front. Not a timeshare. A laundering conduit. Maybe she thought she was just enjoying the perks of dating a guy with deep pockets. But perks come with paper trails. And paper doesn't care about intent. My phone buzzed again, another call from her. I let it ring out, let it die. Her voice already echoed in my mind. Demanding. Hurt. Confused. She'd get her answers. Just not from me. Not yet. Keller handed me a mug of burnt black coffee. You're benched for now, he said. Paperwork. De-escalation. Press is sniffing already. I nodded. Fine. I'd done my part. As the room cleared, agents shuffled off to debriefs and data review. I stayed behind. Watched the screens flicker. On the whiteboard, someone had scrawled G. Lohrmann in red beneath a column of charges that stretched halfway down the board. My marriage had died a long time ago. But this was the funeral. Isla thought she'd stripped me bare last night. Thought she saw the whole man. But that photo I sent? That was the real me. And she never even tried to look. She'd call again. And maybe next time, I'd answer. But not yet. For now, the silence was mine. It was only just beginning. The warehouse had quieted, the morning's buzz faded as the team moved on to their next tasks. I stayed behind in the briefing room, alone now, the fluorescent lights humming softly overhead. The whiteboard still glared back at me, G. Lohrmann scribbled in thick black marker above a cascade of felony charges. My coffee had gone cold, but I sipped it anyway. The bitterness anchored me. My phone sat face down on the table, silent for the first time in hours. Isla had stopped calling. Maybe she'd finally burned herself out. Or maybe she was still in holding, surrounded by questions she wasn't ready to answer. Either way, I didn't care. Not in that moment. I leaned back in my chair, eyes drifting toward the file Keller had left behind, Grant's whole world, dissected and catalogued, boxed and sealed. My work? 3 years in the making. The door creaked. Rowan leaned in, chewing gum as usual. Interrogation starting, he said. Lorman's in room 3. Torres is already in. I stood up, boots echoing against the concrete as we walked down the hallway, past agents hunched over laptops and evidence kits. The air back here was cooler. Tighter. Less forgiving. The interrogation rooms were bare steel and tension. One-way glass. No comfort. I stopped at the window. Inside, Grant Lorman sat cuffed to the table. Gone was the tailored suit, the charm, the swagger. In its place, county orange, greasy hair, and a twitchy look that said he already knew how bad this was going to get. Torres flipped through a folder across from him, calm as ever. "You've got a lot to say, Grant," he said evenly. "Let's hear it." Grant leaned forward, his cuffs clinking against the metal. "I'll talk," he said too quickly. "But I want a deal. I'm not the top guy." "She is." Torres didn't blink. "You're the one in cuffs. Start talking." And then he did. "It's Isla," he said. "She helped with the accounts. She pushed for the car, the villa. Said we needed to look like a legit couple. She's the one who told me to buy the Mykonos place." I clenched my fists at my sides. He was lying, and not even well. Isla couldn't run a crypto wallet if her life depended on it. But he kept going. "She's got a safety deposit box. Downtown. You'll find the documents in there." Torres jotted it down without a word. "Anything else?" he asked. Grant nodded eagerly. "She chose everything. I just followed." I turned from the glass, jaw tight. Rowan gave a low whistle. "He's throwing her to the wolves." "Yeah," I muttered. "Won't work." I knew Isla wasn't clean, she'd welcome the comfort, the flash, but she wasn't orchestrating anything. She was just collateral. And now she was caught in the fallout. She wasn't a mastermind, just greedy. Blind. So wrapped up in her new soulmate that she never once asked where the money came from. The Bureau would sort it out fast. They already had the paper trail, $140,000 in assets under Isla's name, all tied directly to Grant Lorman's dirty cash. The diamond necklace she flaunted at fundraisers. The luxury SUV she parked in what used to be our garage. And that villa in Mykonos she gushed about to her sister like it was a fairy tale. It was all enough to pull her under, whether she knew the whole picture or not. I stepped out of the observation wing and made my way back to the briefing room, needing air that didn't taste like recycled adrenaline. My phone buzzed. Not Isla this time. "Mike. My lawyer." I answered. "What's up?" His voice was clipped, all business. "She's asking to see you." "Isla." I ran a hand over my face, the beginning of a headache pressing at my temples. "She called your office?" From holding, Mike confirmed. "Didn't say much, just that it's urgent. She's not charged, but they're digging. And she's scared." I didn't respond right away. "You don't owe her anything," Mike added. "You know that, right?" He was right. But 17 years doesn't just switch off like a light. And maybe, just maybe, I wanted to see her see me for who I really was. "Set it up," I said. "I'll go." The call ended. I exhaled and looked down at the file in front of me. Lorman was still in the interrogation room, talking like a man inches from drowning. The safety deposit box? I'd bet my truck it was a bluff. But the villa? That was real. We'd flagged the shell company tied to the deed weeks ago. A $2 million laundering front nestled on the cliffs of Mykonos. Isla had posted a dozen smiling selfies there. Hashtagging #blessed like she was starring in her own personal rom-com. Now, it was evidence. And her name was on the paperwork. Probation, maybe worse. Either way, she was in the net now, caught in something built for Grant, but tight enough to drag her along. An hour later, Mike texted the details, 2 p.m., Bureau Conference Room. I passed the time reviewing evidence, burner calls, cash bundles, photos, account logs. All clean. All damning. By the time I pulled into the station, I felt solid. Clear. The building loomed in steel and stone. Cold, professional. An agent met me at the door and led me to a conference room, beige walls, steel chairs, the usual setup. I sat. Waited. Then the door opened. And Isla walked in. No cuffs, but she looked wrecked. Hair tangled, face pale, red-rimmed eyes. Her designer robe was gone, replaced by jeans, a hoodie, and the hollow look of someone who hadn't slept. She froze in the doorway when she saw me. Her lips parted, then shut. I nodded toward the chair. Sit. She did, slowly, like the floor might disappear under her. They're saying I'm part of this, she whispered, eyes darting. That I'm involved. But I didn't know, Eli. I swear I didn't know. I said nothing. Just watched. She fidgeted, wringing her hands before finally leaning forward. It was you, she said, voice cracking. The raid. The arrest. It was you. I nodded once. Yeah. Tears swelled in her eyes, slipping past her lashes as her jaw tightened. Why didn't you tell me, she asked, broken. Who you really were? I leaned back, my tone flat. You never asked. She blinked, stunned. You never cared. And there it was. The truth, clean, final. She stared at me, shoulders shaking. Her fingers clenched together on the table. The conference room smelled like old carpet and cheap coffee, cold in that way all bureau spaces are. The silence between us was loud. I cared, she said, but it came out weak, like even she didn't believe it. She swallowed, I didn't know it was this. FBI? Surveillance? You're not, you were supposed to be some desk guy. An analyst. An accountant. Her voice cracked higher, like she was trying to shift the blame. Like this was somehow my betrayal. I didn't react. I told you I worked for the government, I said, calm and deliberate. You filled in the blanks you wanted to hear. She shook her head, fast and loose, like she could toss the truth aside. That's not fair. You lied. I leaned forward, folding my hands on the table. My voice didn't rise. I didn't lie, I said. I protected you. I kept you out of it. Then I paused, let it land. Until you let him in. Her face buckled at that. I didn't need to say Grant's name, she knew exactly who I meant. The weight of it dropped between us, heavy and final. She'd made her choices. Worn the gifts. Slept in his villa. And now she was sitting in a bureau interrogation room, crying in a hoodie that probably wasn't even hers. And for once, I wasn't the one keeping secrets. She was. And I already knew them all. I didn't know who he really was, Isla whispered, eyes fixed on her trembling hands. He was kind. He listened. Her voice cracked. You were always distant. Distant. The word hit me, but it didn't hurt. She wasn't wrong. I'd been gone more nights than I could count. Missions, briefings, field runs I could never explain. There were walls I had to build, lines I couldn't let her cross. I thought I was protecting her. And I had tried. Fixed that damn leaky roof she kept complaining about. Paid every bill. Listened to her drone on about her sister's wedding drama and those boutique sales she loved. But somewhere along the way, she stopped seeing it. Stopped seeing me. You wanted a soulmate, I said, voice even. You found one. That shattered something in her. She broke down fast, full-body sobs, like the kind that come too late to change anything. I didn't mean for this, she gasped between tears. The money, the gifts, I thought he was just generous. I didn't know it was criminal. And I believed her. Mostly. Isla wasn't a mastermind. She'd barely passed geometry, let alone launder money through offshore trusts. But she took it all anyway, let herself be swept up in luxury, distracted by shine. Greed didn't need brains. Just willingness. They're saying I could go to jail, she cried, looking up at me with those wide, wet eyes. You have to help me. I didn't flinch. I can't. Simple. Final. You're in it now. There's evidence. Your name's on the villa, on the wire transfers. You took his money. She shook her head wildly. But I didn't know. You know I didn't. Then tell them, I said, my voice quiet. Her chair scraped the floor as she leaned in, desperate. They'll listen to you. If you're clean, I replied, you'll walk. And if not? I left that part unspoken. She stared at me like I'd gutted her. You're not even going to try? She asked, barely above a whisper. After everything? 17 years rushed back, quiet Sunday mornings, burned dinners. That night she fell asleep on my chest during a storm. But nostalgia isn't a rescue plan. You told me to leave, I said, locking eyes with her. No papers needed. So I did. She winced. Maybe it finally registered. I didn't mean it like this, she whispered, tears splashing onto the cold table. I was mad, stupid. I didn't think. She trailed off, her voice swallowed by silence. I didn't feel the silence. There was nothing left to say. The door opened. A young agent stepped in, buzz cut, clipboard tucked under one arm. Fresh out of Quantico, probably. He gave me a glance. Time's up, he said. She's due back in holding. Isla looked at him, then at me, panic flashing in her swollen eyes. Wait, she whispered, reaching across the table. Her fingers grazed mine, cold, trembling. Please, don't let them take me. Her voice cracked. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I pulled my hand back, slow, deliberate. I can't fix this, I told her. You made your choices. The agent stepped closer. Ma'am. She rose, unsteady, smudged mascara trailing down her cheeks. As they moved toward the door, she looked over her shoulder one last time. I didn't know you, she said, voice shaking. I should have. I didn't. The door clicked shut behind her. The air returned to stillness. I sat there a moment, staring at the empty chair. Her words echoed, circling like smoke. I didn't know you. She was right. But I'd known her, every version of her. The woman who laughed too loud at brunches. The one who went quiet when she was disappointed. The one who stopped asking where I went at night. 17 years, and she only saw me clearly once it all crumbled. I stood. My chair scraped across the floor. Outside, the hallway was cold, lined with steel doors and worn-out linoleum. The young agent gave me a nod as I passed. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from Mike. She's a wreck. You good? I replied simply. Yeah. And I was. Not happy. Not angry. Just done. She wanted a lifeline. Forgiveness. But I didn't have it to give. Not because I hated her, but because some things can't be fixed with I'm sorry. She'd built a life with Grant brick by brick, whether she saw it or not. I just took it apart. She'd answer for it now. That was out of my hands. I headed back to the warehouse, her voice still playing in my mind. But it didn't weigh me down like it used to. She saw me now. Too bad it took this to make it happen. The drive back was quiet. The sun had crept higher, glinting off storefront windows and the hood of my truck. The heater rattled like it always did. I cracked the window anyway, letting the breeze run through. My hands were steady. My head clear. She'd said sorry like it could undo everything. But it couldn't. She dug the hole. I just flipped the lights on. Back at the warehouse, the team was still deep in cleanup mode. Evidence bags, laptops, file boxes, everything from the raids was stacked across the long metal tables like trophies from a war. Rowan waved me over, snapping his gum loud enough to echo. "Lorman's sentencing set," he said, handing me a folder. "Judge pushed it through this morning. 22 years. Racketeering, fraud, conspiracy, the full stack." I flipped it open. Grant had tried to squirm, dragging Isla's name and a few others into the mud, but the paper trail didn't lie. My paper trail. Every tap, transfer, flipped witness, that was my work. 3 years of my life, reduced to a file and a prison term. "Good," I said, snapping it shut. "He's done." Rowan leaned against the edge of the table. "What about her?" I shrugged. "Probation. 3 years. They're throwing in a financial ethics course for good measure." "No jail?" He let out a low whistle. "That's a soft landing." I didn't disagree. 140 grand in gifts. Jewelry. The car. That ridiculous villa in Mykonos. Her name was on all of it. But she wasn't the architect. Just the one who walked into the trap with her eyes half closed. The bureau knew it. The judge did too. She got lucky. But luck doesn't wipe away the fallout. The media was already in a frenzy. The TVs in the warehouse were muted, but the footage spoke for itself. Grant in cuffs, Isla shielded behind dark sunglasses, swarmed by reporters. My name had surfaced in the coverage, even though I'd declined every request for comment. They called. Left voicemails. I didn't listen. Never wanted the spotlight. Still didn't. Justice didn't need a camera crew. It just needed closure. I grabbed a bottle of water from the back fridge and dropped into a chair, letting the background noise fade. Keller walked over, glasses low on his nose. "Press is all over this," he said, nodding toward the screens. "You sure you don't want to make a statement?" "Looks good for the bureau." I shook my head. "Let the story run itself." He studied me a moment. Then nodded. "Fair enough. You earned that." He dropped a thick new folder on the table, thicker than Grant's. "Next case. When you're ready." I didn't open it. Just tapped the cover. "Soon," I said. He walked off, and I sat in the noise again, letting it blur. Isla's face flashed in my mind, not the woman in tears, but the one from that final night. Laughing. Confident. Sure she'd won. "No papers needed," she'd said. Like she'd ended it. But I was the one who finished it. Now Isla was on probation. Her lover locked away. Her name splashed across local news tickers like a headline no one wanted to claim. The house. Gone. Seized and listed for auction alongside the Mykonos villa and everything else Grant Lorman had touched. The last I heard, she was crashing at her sister's place on the outskirts of town. No more sleek European sedans. No private jet weekends. Just a cramped apartment and a court-mandated course on financial responsibility, how not to fall for the next man with a black card and dirty money. I stood up from my desk, stretched my back, and walked over to the long evidence table. Still cluttered with remnants from the case, electronics, paperwork, bagged jewelry. Mixed in was my old laptop from the house, and a photo frame I hadn't expected to see. It was me and Isla at Cannon Beach, back when we still believed in things. We were smiling, arms linked, wind in her hair. She looked at me like I was her world. I traced a thumb across the glass, then set it down, face first. That man in the photo? He didn't exist anymore. No point in holding on to a ghost. My phone buzzed. Mike again. Press keeps calling. You still good with no comment? I replied, let it die. He sent back a thumbs up. I pocketed the phone and exhaled. The warehouse had begun winding down, agents packing up, the hum of chatter shifting into goodbyes. Rowan ambled over, tossing a gum wrapper into the bin. Beer, he asked. Team's heading out. Keller's even buying the first round. I hesitated, then nodded. Yeah. I'm in. We walked out together just as the sun dipped beneath the rooftops, the sky burning orange across the Portland skyline. The bar was a dive a few blocks over, dim lights, sticky floors, cracked leather booths. The team was already halfway into their first pitchers when we arrived. Torres lifted a glass in my direction. To the man who took down Lorman. Rowan shouted, and the place erupted. I smiled. Not wide. But real. The beer was cold. The noise familiar. And for the first time in months, I wasn't buried in silence. No disguises. No locked drawers. Grant was gone. Isla was out. And I was still standing. I stayed until last call, finishing my second beer slow while the others swapped war stories. This was my world now. Not a broken marriage, not the echo of what was. Just this. I paid my tab and stepped outside. The air was cool, the street quiet. The headlines would fade. The voicemails would stop. Tomorrow I'd crack open that new file. A new case. A clean slate. But tonight I just walked. The city wrapped around me like a coat I'd finally grown into. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like myself again. Sunlight leaked through the blinds and stabbed at my eyes. I groaned, rolled over, and grabbed my phone. 7:30 a.m., later than I'd meant to sleep. A message from Rowan blinked on the screen. Good night, huh? Team's still buzzing. I smirked and tossed the phone aside. Last night had been loud, beers, stories, the team raising glasses like I'd pulled off something historic. It felt good. Strange, but good. But now it was back to reality. I swung my legs off the mattress, still just a slab on the floor, and stretched. My back cracked in protest. The kitchen was half unpacked, the coffee maker buried somewhere under a pile of boxes labeled essentials. I boiled water in a dented saucepan and dumped in a spoonful of instant coffee. Tasted like earth, but it got the job done. Leaning against the counter, I sipped slowly, watching the city blink awake. Horns echoed in the street below. Delivery vans pulled into loading zones. People rushed along the sidewalks with that weekday urgency. That old life, the marriage, the cover stories, the villa in Mykonos, it was all gone. Auctioned off. The house, the cars, the art. All seized. Last I heard, the money was rerouted into a victim restitution fund. Fine by me. I didn't want it. Not a single dime. My phone buzzed again. This time, Keller. Office. 9 a.m. Promotions official. I set the mug down, a grin pulling at my mouth. Head of covert financial crimes. After the Lorman takedown, the higher-ups had rushed the paperwork through. Bigger title, bigger messes to clean up, and a little more sunlight on the shadows I used to live in. 17 years I'd spent hidden, now I was stepping into something larger. Not exactly visible, but closer. I showered, lukewarm water rattling in the pipes, and threw on a clean shirt and jeans. No tie. No jacket. Just a promotion meeting and a day at the office. No field work. I grabbed my keys and left. The bureau building rose from the center of the district, glass and steel and sharp angles. Familiar. Cold. Focused. I nodded at the front guard and made my way upstairs. Keller was waiting in his corner office, skyline stretching behind him. Sit, he said, motioning toward a chair. I did. He slid a new badge across the desk. My name. My new title. Head of covert, he said. You're running the show now. Build your team. Pick your ops. Budget's yours. I picked up the badge, felt the weight of it in my palm. Thanks, I said. Keller gave a nod. Don't screw it up. Later, in the break room, the team threw a low-key celebration. Donuts, bad coffee, and better jokes. To the boss. Rowan grinned, raising a crawler. Torres clapped my back. A couple new recruits stood nearby, trying not to look impressed. They all knew what happened with Lorman. With Isla. The raid. The headlines. They knew who I was now. And finally, so did I. You're a legend now, one of the new agents said with a half grin as I passed. I shook my head, brushing it off. Just did the job, I told him, grabbing a glazed donut from the box. But something stuck in my chest. Not pride exactly, something quieter. Acknowledgement. This was the kind of respect I'd never had when I was just Isla's husband. Back then, I was the guy who fixed the leaky sink and kept the lawn trimmed. Now, I was something else. When the others cleared out, I made my way to my new office. Bigger space, solid desk, actual window. Not bad for a guy who used to log case notes from a cubicle. The file Keller had handed me sat on the corner, waiting. I opened it. New target, a crypto fraudster operating out west. Shell companies, fake coin launches, money laundering in real time. I flipped through the pages, marking sections, the rhythm of the work steady and grounding. Fresh case. Clean slate. Mine from the ground up. No more tiptoeing around Isla's moods. No more pretending I wasn't who I was. My phone buzzed. Isla. I froze, thumb hovering above the screen. First message I'd gotten from her since the conference room, the tears, the apologies, the whole unraveling. I'd heard she was still with her sister. Court-ordered classes had started. Her name still popped up on local feeds when the news cycle got slow. I opened the message. Can we talk? Please. I need to say something. Simple. Heavy. Part of me wanted to delete it on instinct, bury it like everything else from that life. But 17 years didn't vanish cleanly. I didn't respond. I turned the phone face down and went back to the file. The rest of the day moved in blur, briefings, internal reviews, a sandwich from the vending machine. Evening fell. The office thinned out. Only a few lights still flickered overhead. I leaned back in my chair and stared out the window. The Portland skyline shimmered in dusky blue and amber. This life, promotion, team, purpose, wasn't one I'd imagined a year ago. Not from that old house. Not beside someone who never looked past the surface. But here I was. And it was mine. I picked the phone back up. Read her message again. I need to say something. But what was left to say? I deleted the message. No reply. No call back. She'd made her choices, Grant, the money, the lie. I'd made mine, walk away, burn it down, build something new. The screen faded to black. I stood, slipped on my jacket, and shut the office door behind me. The hallway echoed with my footsteps as I made my way to the garage. A clean slate. A quiet night. And no ghosts left to chase. Outside, the air was cool and sharp with that late autumn bite. The city buzzed beneath streetlights and early traffic. My truck rattled to life on the second try, and I eased it into gear, heading home while the skyline faded behind me in the mirror. This was the aftermath, her life in ruins, mine finally on the rise. And I was at peace with that. The new office had become a quiet kind of sanctuary. Sleek furniture, clean lines, none of the clutter I used to pile up in that cramped cubicle where I spent years waiting for someone to see me. It was Monday again, 1 week into the promotion, and I walked in with a coffee from the corner shop, strong, rich, and light years better than the powdered stuff I'd been choking down in my apartment. The skyline looked different from here, bolder, wider, like something I'd finally earned the right to see clearly. I set my coffee on the desk, hung my jacket on the back of the chair, and opened the folder waiting for me. My latest assignment, a crypto scam running out of California. Some slick operator masking millions in fake NFT sales, laundering it through shell companies and anonymous wallets. I leaned into it, pen in hand, notes flowing like muscle memory. This was closure. A clean break from the past. My phone stayed silent. No calls from Isla. No apologies. No final texts. Deleting her last message had been the line in the sand. I didn't regret it. By 9 a.m., the office was humming, keyboards clicking, phones ringing, the occasional burst of laughter echoing down the hallway. Rowan poked his head in, grinning. "Boss man settled in?" he asked, tossing a stress ball into the air. I caught it. Tossed it back. "Getting there." He leaned against the doorframe. "Team's ready when you are." New blood's already circling the crypto guy like sharks. I nodded, tapping the case file. "Briefing at 10. Bring the good coffee." He gave a mock salute and disappeared. I liked this. Leading from the front. No masks. No double life. Just the work. I took a sip, the coffee warming my chest, and dove deeper into the file. Bryce Digital Arts. Encrypted transactions. Layered shell accounts. Messy. But I'd untangled worse. Reed Lorman had been proof of that. At 10 sharp, the team filtered in Rowan, Torres, two rookies with restless energy and sharp eyes. I stood at the whiteboard, marker ready. "Target's name is Ethan Bryce," I began, writing it across the top. "Age 34. Lives in LA, runs a front called Bryce Digital Arts." I turned, looking each of them in the eye. "He's moved $8 million through fake NFT sales. But it goes deeper. I want eyes on his transactions, his associates, his lifestyle." They nodded, pens moving. Focused. Rowan raised an eyebrow. "Another read?" I shook my head, smiling faintly. "Smarter. Quieter. But just as dirty." We moved slow. Built it tight. The briefing stretched for an hour, questions flying, timelines forming, early leads tossed across the table like cards in a game we knew how to play. By the end, that old fire had returned. Not adrenaline. Something cleaner. Sharper. Purpose. Lunch was a turkey sandwich at my desk, crumbs landing on Ethan Bryce's case file as I scrawled notes and cross-checked records. The afternoon blurred into a string of phone calls, emails, and quiet favors, pushing for warrants, tapping known sources, pulling threads on shell companies tied to Bryce's operation. It was the kind of work that quieted my head. No room for Isla's voice, her tears, her "I'm sorry" echoing from that conference room. She was gone, serving probation, stuck in her sister's spare bedroom with her pride in shambles and her story fading from the news cycle. The house was long sold. The villa? Liquidated. Everything we built, gone like it had never mattered. And maybe, in the end, it hadn't. I didn't follow the headlines anymore. The story of the undercover husband and the oblivious wife had faded into background noise. Old gossip. Good. Around 5, I leaned back, stretching my neck until it popped. The office was thinning out, the end-of-day lull settling in. I grabbed my empty mug and headed to the break room. Torres stood by the vending machine, smacking the side until a candy bar dropped into the tray. "Solid first day, boss?" he asked, biting off a grin. I rinsed out the mug. "Yeah. Solid start." He ripped the wrapper open and shrugged. "Heard Lorman's filing an appeal." "Let him." I dried my hands. "He's done." Torres nodded. "Damn right." Then he headed out, still chewing. I lingered a moment. The break room was quiet except for the soft drip from the sink. Reed could scream about justice all he wanted, 22 years wasn't moving. The case was airtight. He was history. Back in my office, I packed the case file into my bag, slid into my jacket, and shut off the lights. Outside, the city glowed with that golden hour haze, buildings catching fire in the last light of day. I locked the door and took the stairs down alone, my boots echoing in the stillness. The truck coughed to life. The ride home was smooth, traffic light, the radio murmuring some indie track I didn't recognize. When I stepped into my apartment, the only sound was the hum of the fridge. I dropped my gear, pulled off my boots, and poured a glass of water. No beer. No noise. Just peace. I stood at the window for a while, watching the street below. Dog walkers, headlights, someone jogging past in neon shoes. Isla's words floated back, no divorce papers needed. Just leave. I had. I'd left the marriage, the pretense, the version of me she never bothered to understand. She thought she'd won that night. But I walked away with something better, clarity. Dignity. A life that finally fit. That warrant I served on Grant? It wasn't just for him. It was for me too. My own closure. Didn't need a judge to stamp it. I'd signed it myself. I set the glass down, the case file waiting quietly in my bag. Another target. Another chase. Another chance to do what I do best. I laid back on the mattress, arms behind my head, staring at the ceiling of my bare apartment. No ghosts. No noise. Just me, the job, and the road ahead. My goodbye had already happened. This was everything after. And it felt right. If you followed me this far, you know my story isn't just about taking down a criminal or walking out of a broken marriage. It's about rediscovering myself, quietly, without applause. It's about walking away from what no longer fits, even when it hurts. I won't ask for your sympathy. But if something I've said, or done, or fought through has echoed in your own life, then I'll ask for your honesty. Drop a comment. Tell me what you walked away from. Tell me when you stopped pretending, when you finally chose yourself over comfort or expectation. Speak up, for you, for me, for the ones still buried in their version of my old life. And if you're still in that place, stuck in someone else's shadow, ask yourself this: what would happen if you let it all burn down and started again? You might just find freedom on the other side. To those who've read this and thought, damn, I've been there, thank you. Your eyes on this story matter more than any headline or news blurb ever could. If you've got a word for me, leave it below. Say what you wish someone had said to you when you were at your lowest. Because words, real ones, can change the course of a life. They did for me. And here's my advice to carry forward: don't wait for a crisis to wake you up. Don't wait for betrayal, for a crash, for someone else to decide when it's over. Take control while your hands still work. Build something honest. Leave when it stops feeling right. Love deeply, but never smaller than who you really are. Because the world doesn't need more people pretending to be happy. It needs more people who are brave enough to mean it.